right. Now then, okay, great. I just need to make sure it doesn't bother us. Okay, super. All right, Zoom, here we are. Got it, okay, all right. So hi Vita, hi Ella, and hopefully the others will join as we go along. So I'm going to just start, all right? So we start off with our tefillah. Okay, oh, I have to share my screen, sorry. Here we go. All right. Ribon Olamim, Fadonei Adonim, Avra Haman Vaslichot, Modim Anachnu Lefanecha, Adonai Eloheinu V'Leavotenu, B'Kida B'Shtachavaya, Shekaraftonu L'Toratcha U'Le'Avadotcha Avodat HaKodesh, V'Natata Lanu Chelek B'Sodot Tortecha Kedusha, Ma'anu U'Mechayenu, Asher Asita Imanu, Chesed Gadol Kazeh, Oken Anachnu Mapilim Tachnunenu Lefanecha, שתמחול ותסלח לכל חטאותינו ועוונותינו, ועל יהיו עוונותינו מבדילים בינינו לביניך, וכן יהי רצון מלפניך, אדוני אלוהינו ולאבותינו, שתכונן את לבבינו ליראתך ולבבך, תקשיב אוזניך לדברינו אלה, ותפתח לבבינו הערל בסודות תורתך, ויהיה לימודנו זה נחת רוח, לפני כיסא כבודך, כרך ניחוח. ותאציל עלינו, מקום נשמתנו בכל בחינתנו, שיתנוצצו ניצוצות עבודיך הקדושים, אשר על ידם גלית דבריך אלה בעולם, וזכותם, וזכות אבותם, וזכות תורתם ותמימותם וקדושתם, יעמוד לנו לבן לקשר בדברים אלו, ובזכותם תראה עינינו במה שאנו לומדים, מאמר נעים זמירות ישראל, גל עיניי והביט הנפלאות מתורתך, כי אדוני ייתן חוכמה מפיו, דעת ותבונה, יהיו לו רצונים מפי, ויגון ליבי לפניך, אדוני צורי וגורלי. Amen. Can you rtzon? Okay. So I want to dedicate the learning today for a shalema, for a soldier who was in a road traffic accident, unfortunately. He's getting better, Bezrat Hashem, but he still needs a lot of tefillot. And so his name is Yonatan Ben Nirit. Refuah Shalema, we're together with all the other people in Israel who need a refuah. Okay, so today we've got a treat, Bezrat Hashem, absolute treat in my humble opinion, and that is learning the piece of the Zohar, which is traditional, that we read on Shavuot night, okay, because it's the traditional piece of Zohar, which is actually talks about Shavuot and talks about what the essence of Shavuot actually is. Okay, some of you might have learnt it with me before, but I find that when we learn Zohar, there's so many levels to it, so many depths to it, that it's absolutely every time is another level, another connection that we can make. So for those of you who are not familiar with the page of the Zohar, okay, so I'm just going to zoom out a moment so you can see. Here at the top, we have the Aramaic, all right? Here in the middle, we have references to the text of the Torah, whatever, cross-references in the Zohar itself. It's really, really super helpful. And underneath here, we have the Sulam commentary, which is Rabbi Ashlag's commentary on Zohar, which is really an application of the understandings from the work of the Ari to the Zohar itself. Okay, so we'll start off by reading the Aramaic, okay, to connect with the original words, and then I'll go straight into the commentary and explain that in English. All right. So Rabbi Shimon, Hava Yativ Ulai Ba'uraita, Beleya de Kalit Habrat Babala, the Taninan Kol Inun Havai de Bnei Hechala de Kala, it's Tarichu Bahu Lelia. The Kala is Damnat Lemhevoi Lioma Achra Go Chuppah Babala, Lemheve Ima Kolahu Lelia, Ulmachade Ima Bitukanha, Dihu Takanat, Limale Ba'uraita. מתורה לנביאים, מנביאים לכתובים, ממפרשות קראי ברזי תוכחמתה, בגין דאילן, אינון תיקונין דילן, ותכשיתה, ועולמתה עלת וקיימת על ראשיהון, ותקנת בהו וחדת בהו כל הגולליה. וליום האחרא לא עלת לחופה אלא בהדייהו, ואילן עיקון בני חופתה. וכיוון דעלת לחופתה, קודשא בריחו שאיל עליהו, מברך לון ומעטל לון ליתרא דקלה, זכאה וכהון. Okay, so Rabbi Shimon was sitting, and the word here is osek b'Torah. That is like practicing the Torah, being involved with the Torah. And I think what it really means here is that the Torah is not just intellectual learning, okay? It's not just learning information. It's like being involved with it, taking it inside, dealing with it, seeing how we can put it into practice, okay? Allowing it to touch our soul, all right? Because the Zohar tells us that the essence of the Torah, the essence of God, and the essence of the soul are actually one. The Torah, God, and one, and the soul are one, okay? So asok b'Torah, to practice the Torah, is not just to get it intellectual information, it's really to make that connection with God, connection with the soul within us, okay? Balayla, on the night, okay? When it talks about the night, it doesn't mean the physical night. It means the time in which God's light is hidden from us. We all have times when God's light is shining, and we have times when God's light is hidden. Okay? So he's actually sitting and practicing the Torah in the night, in the time when God's light is hidden. Shebo hakala, in which the bride, which is the malchut, which is the soul, and the bride itself is the Shechinah, which is the collective soul of Israel. Mitchabrat b'bala. So the Shechinah actually joins with God during the night, during the time when God's light is hidden from us, which is an amazing idea, okay? We think that we join with God when the light is shining, when God's light is present, and when we feel good and happy. But he's telling us something the exact opposite. He's saying, no, the time when we really join with God is actually in the dark, when God's light is not shining, in the time of exile, in the time of when the light of God is lacking for us. All right. And we learn that all the companions of the bride, which are the children of the temple of the bride, okay, that's all the companions. Who are the sons of the temple of the bride? The ones who help, the ones who try to do the mitzvot, the ones who try to go in faith with God during the time of that night when the light of God is not shining. And on the morrow, and the morrow can be either Shavuot or the end of the Tikkun, all right? And they both have, as we're going to find out, a common denominator, all right? There's a common denominator between Shavuot and the redemption, the end of the Tikkun. Why? Because what's the end of the Tikkun? The end of the Tikkun, the redemption, is when God's light will be totally present and each man will know God, okay? Like he won't need to be taught about God. He'll know God instinctively within himself. Or it says, and the knowledge of God will be, and the world will be filled with the knowledge of God, like the water covers the seabed. It'll be totally natural for us to know God, in that we'll have that total experience of God's light. And Shavuot, on the day of Shavuot, when God came down on Mount Sinai, and he gave that total experience of his presence, he spoke directly into the hearts of every single person standing there. He spoke directly because they could hear it, they could feel it. I mean, it's the presence of God was undeniable. All right. So that in that sense, both Shavuot and the end of the Tikkun have the same essence, but also in another way. And that is because the Torah itself, like we said, is the essence of God. And so on Shavuot, when the Torah itself was given, all right, that is the key to redemption. All right. So the Kala, the bride, so that's the Shechinah, is intended to be under the chuppah. What's the chuppah? The wedding canopy, all right, with her husband. So in other words, at the time of the end of the Tikkun, whether we're talking about Shavuot or whether we're talking about the end of the Tikkun, there is a wedding, there is a zivug. What is a zivug? The union of opposites, all right? When you have a man and woman get together, okay, have intercourse together, that is called zivug, okay? They're uniting together. It's the union of opposites, okay? To be with her, okay? So the companions, all right, of the Kala, the companions of the Shechinah, need to be with her, with the Shechinah, or during all that time of the night and the time when God's light is absent. And to rejoice with her, b'tikuneha, in her rectifications. Okay, what's the rectification? The rectification is learning to use our will to give, learning to connect with our will to give, learning to connect with the soul, and not using our will to receive for ourselves alone, which separates us from God, okay, and to correct it ultimately to the will to receive for the sake of giving, which brings us into affinity of form with the Creator. And how do we do it? L'asok b'Torah, by our occupation, by our practice with the Torah. Okay, like we said earlier, it doesn't mean the intellectual learning. It means bringing it through in our lives, in our thoughts, in our minds, in our speech, in our actions. Okay, and from the Torah to the prophets to the writings, all the different aspects. Drashot and Mikraot, this is the Midrash. Okay, and Sodot HaChochmah. So it's talking about all levels of Torah, which is the Pshat, Remez, Drash, and Sod. Okay? Because all levels of the Torah, in fact, contain within them the tikkunim of the bride, how to rectify ourselves. Okay? The Torah is called instruction. So this is what the Torah is about. It's about how can I come closer to God, all right? And especially the inner meanings of the Torah, the Zohar. The Zohar tells us what these inner meanings are, and it's through those inner meanings that we can come close to God. So these are the tikkunim of the bride and her jewelry. I really like that word, okay? It's an adornment. And this is very much how the Holy Ari expresses the whole creation, whole purpose of creation, the whole bringing forth of creation, which the purpose was to give pleasure to the created beings, but the Malchut, the vessel of the Ein Sof, wanted to meet more affinity of form than it was in the Ein Sof. And this is a sort of a jewelry, a decoration, that we come to a better place than we were before. It's like something which is already beautiful and make it even more beautiful. And she, the bride, and her handmaidens, comes and stands over their heads, over the all those people, all the tzaddikim, all the people who've tried to do their best to rectify, in other words, to do mitzvot, to do Torah and mitzvot. Now, it doesn't mean to say we have to do it completely. We just have to do what we're given to do, okay? Some of us are born in circumstances where we're more able to do Torah and mitzvot. Others are born in other circumstances. Whatever is possible for us, remember, we're born in the circumstances that God wants us to be. We don't have any control over that, okay? Whatever circumstances we are in, we can do the best we can in that incarnation. All right, we go around many times. We incarnate many times. And in different incarnations, we're given different levels of Torah and mitzvot to do. All right, sometimes we're born as a man, sometimes we're born as a woman, sometimes we've been born in the time of the temple, and there's far more Torah and mitzvot available. Okay, so there's different levels, but whatever we're given to do, that's what we need to do. And so the bride is rejoicing with all these companions throughout the night, throughout the time when God's light is hidden, which is the time of the tikkun. Lemachot, on the following day, which can either be the day of Shavuot or the day of the redemption, she only comes to the chuppah together with those companions who have helped her. And the chuppah, in fact, is the wedding canopy is actually made up of all the returned light, okay, all the mitzvot that they have done actually forms the actual wedding canopy. So the companions who've been practicing the Torah through this night are called the children of the wedding canopy. And since she comes to the wedding canopy, when she comes to the wedding canopy, HaKadosh Baruch Hu, the Holy Blessed One, asks after them and blesses them and crowns them with the crowns of the bride, the light of the bride, okay, the light that she receives, the Shechinah receives from HaKadosh Baruch Hu, all that light, she gives that also to the companions. Ashrei Chelkam, happy is their portion. Okay, any questions? You guys okay so far? Okay, so that was a translation of and a little bit of discussion on the actual Aramaic. So now we're going to go into Rabbi Ashlag's Perush, into Rabbi Ashlag's commentary. All right? So some of it will repeat a little bit of what we've just said, but it goes into more detail. Bior HaDvarim, explanation. Yesh b'zeh shtei perushim u'shneim olim b'kaneh echad. We have here two explanations, and both of them arise on one stem. One, Ki yemei hagalut nikuim laila. For the days of the exile are called the night. Ki hu hazman shel hastarat panav mibnei Israel. It's the time of the hiding of God's face from the children of Israel. That's the night. Vaz shultim kol kochot yipiru dalov de'Hashem. And then all the servants of God are governed, are ruled over by the powers of separation. All right. So then that's when the time of night is when all the powers which separate us are kind of like governing us. All right. What does that mean? In our terms, it means the will to receive for ourselves alone, which is within us, is affecting us. It's attacking us. It's causing us to separate from God. And it's another word for that is the Yetzer Hara, okay, the evil inclination, whichever way we want to call it. That the powers of the evil, the framework of evil, which is outside us but also inside us, okay, are governing us. Okay, we find it hard to get up to do a mitzvah. We're attacked by our different desires of our wills to receive ourselves alone. This is called the night. Okay. All right. Nevertheless, At that time, it's during this time of the night, okay, that the bride, the Shechinah, joins with her husband, HaKadosh Baruch Hu. So it's actually in the time of the night, in the time when God's presence is not felt, okay, it's actually in that time that the bride joins with her husband through the Torah and the mitzvot of the tzaddikim. Through the Torah and the mitzvot of the tzaddikim. Now, Rabbi Ashlag defines the tzaddik, okay, in a very simple way. He said, whoever matzdik at HaKadosh Baruch Hu is called a tzaddik. Whoever justifies God is called a tzaddik. In other words, he's suffering from his lack of connection with God. He's suffering the lack of seeing God's light, and yet he doesn't turn away from God. You must stick it there. He says, the problem is in me, okay, and I have faith in God. All right, so must stick at HaKadosh Baruch Hu. That's the definition of the tzaddik. And so the tzaddik, one who even in the time of the night is called by that at that time, he's called b'shem tamchin de'oraita, those who uphold the Torah. Okay, he goes on to say something really powerful. He says, "V'kol madrigot aniskavot hanikot razim de'oraita," all the spiritual levels, the high spiritual levels, which we designate as the inner meanings of the Torah. What is the inner meanings? The inner meanings is the intentions. God's intentions. What is the intention behind this mitzvah? What is the intention behind the acts of our forefathers? These are the inner meanings of the Torah. Mitgalot al-yedehem, are actually discovered by them during the time of the night. Now, in general, we don't enjoy the times of the night. We prefer the times of the day when God's light is shining for us. Why is that? It's because we originate in the Ein Sof, where the light is shining all the time and the vessel is receiving all the light. And anything which is different from what was in the Ein Sof by nature, we don't like. So we don't like it when the time of the night. But what Rabbi Ashlag is telling us here, he's telling us it's a precious time because it's during that time that the light and the vessel can actually join in faith. All right. So all these spiritual levels, which are called the inner meanings of the Torah, are actually discovered in those times. Okay. And in fact, he gives them an even higher name. He says they are called the makers. It's as if they are actually making the Torah. Wow. They are making the Torah manifest. All right. In a letter which Rabbi Ashlag writes on the reason why the soul comes into the body, he says that it's only in the times of darkness, in the times when God's light is hidden, which is only when the soul comes into this whole thing we call the body, which is the world to receive ourselves alone, that we actually discover the names of God. It's only when we sin, God forbid, that we discover God's forgiveness. It's only when we get sick, God forbid, that we discover God as the healer. Okay? So it's in these times of darkness that it's actually through that we actually discover the true names of God. All right? And by keeping faith in that time, we're actually manifesting sin, the makers of the Torah. It's a very powerful statement here. So we find that the days of exile, the days when God's light is missing, okay, are actually designated the night of the bride, when the bride, that's the Shechinah, of which we're all part, actually joins with her husband. And all those who are the companions, the children of the temple of the bride, they are upholding the Torah. And after the end of the tikkun, and the complete redemption, okay? Galut, Gola, is without the connection with Aleph. With the Aleph, it's redemption. Shusoda Katu, which is the inner meaning of the scripture, Vaya Yom Echad, Uyivadal Hashem, Lo Yom Velo Laila, Vaya Le'et Erev Yeh. And it will be on one day, which will be known to God, neither day nor night. And it will be towards evening, there will be light, and there will be light. And this is a phrase, a pasuk from Zohar, which is describing the actuality of the end of the tikkun, where even the evening, the night, will be light. So at that time of redemption, Husha Omer, the kala is damnat lemhevoy leyom ha'achar go chuppah b'ba'ala. It is when the bride is invited to be on that day, following the exile or following the night of Shavuot, okay, to be under the chuppah with her husband, okay, which is the day of Shavuot. Now, this is just technical terms from the word, like the language of the Ari, to tell us at that time, also, not only our consciousness will rise, but also the spiritual worlds will go up in consciousness. And this is therefore called like another day, like a totally new reality and a new chuppah. But tzadikim b'eitahinim b'nei chuppata, and the tzadikim at that time are called the children of the chuppah. So at this time, during the time when God's light is revealed, at the end of the tikkun, where the open light is present, okay, then there's no actually needing to manifest, to make the Torah, as we had to do in the time of darkness, okay, but we simply occupying ourselves in Torah, being fruitful in Torah, because you don't actually have to make it, because the light is already present. And then it said, and the land will be filled with the knowledge of God as the water covers the seabed. And since the tzadikim, through their good deeds, okay, will raise up the different worlds to be of a higher consciousness, and they have to draw on their faith from the time that was past. Why? Because faith is really applicable when God's light is not present. Then we actually have to exercise our we actually have to exercise our faith, because it's during the time when God's light is not present. But when God's light is totally present, filling all reality, filling our inner reality and our outer reality, okay, then how do the tzaddikim find faith? They have to use the same behavior, if you like, that characteristic that is developed whilst they were in the time of night, and use it in the time of the day. They draw it on it from the time of the past. And so therefore they're called the children of the chuppah. I just noticed that my microphone has dropped down. Have you been able to hear it? Okay. Oh well, we've just found it again. All right. Any questions before we go on?
I'm with you.
Good for you, my girl. Amazing. Baruch Hashem. Okay. All right. So the second explanation, like we said, they're completely equivalent. Asher leil Shavuot nikra leila dekalit chabat b'ba'ala, is that the night of Shavuot is called the night in which the bride joins with her husband. Ki az hu is damnat lemevo b'yom ha'achar go chuppah b'ba'ala, because then she's invited to be on that following day under the wedding canopy with her husband. Dahainu b'yom Shavuot, which is the day of Shavuot. To Yom Kabbalat Torah, which is the day of the receiving of the Torah. Omnam u'inyan echad mamash ma'bior rishon, but it really is the same essence completely as that first explanation that we just looked at. Ki b'yom Kabbalat Torah haya kvar b'chinat gemara tikun, because the day of receiving of the Torah is already the essence of the end of the tikkun, of the geula shlema, of the complete redemption. So bala hamavet lanetzach, u'macha Hashem Elokim dima me'al kol panim. In the meaning of death is swallowed up forever, and the Lord God wipes away tears from off all faces. Kamo shedarshu Chazal, as the sages have explained, ala pasuk, harut ala luchot, engraven on the tablets. Okay? Al tikrei harut ela cherut. Don't read engraven, read freedom. Ki ba cherut mimalach hamavet, because comes freedom from the angel of death. Okay, so what's death? Death is swallowed up forever. Freedom comes from the angel of death. Does that mean we're all going to live forever? I don't know. I don't think so. What it means is the word death means being separated from God. That's what it means. All right? Because the Rasha'im b'chayim nikra'im meitim, the wicked in their lifetime are called dead because they are separated from the life of all lives. All right? That's what being dead means. So, besod bala hamavet lanetzach, that death is swallowed up forever, means that separation from God is swallowed up. God, the Lord God wipes away the tears from all faces, the tears of sorrow from being separated from God. All right? And the freedom that we get is from the angel of death, the freedom from our own egoism, our own selfish love, our own Yetzer Hara. One of the names of the Yetzer Hara is Malach HaMavet, the angel of death. Okay? So we comes freedom from our own wills to receive for ourselves alone, which separate us from God. So this is the essence of the day of receiving of the Torah. So great, we reached the receiving of the Torah. Why did we reach the Gemara Tikkun? Okay, what happened? But what happened? But because of the sin of the golden calf, Chazru v'kilkalu tikkun. They messed up the tikkun. They messed up the rectification. They messed this Gemara tikkun up. So the question is, what actually happened? With the Chet Egel, and the answer is you probably have to say that it was meant to be. Okay. Because the sages tell us that if it were not for the Chet Egel, okay, then the Torah would have been just the 5 books of Moses and the book of Joshua. And because of the Chet Egel, the Torah actually was much greater. All right, so ultimately we have to say it came from God. Nevertheless, Shinyan Yom Kabbalat Torah, the day of the receiving of the Torah, Hunyan Echadim Gemara Tikkun, is actually of the same essence as the Gemara Tikkun. V'nimtza shebalayla kodem Kabbalat Torah, and so we find that in the night prior to the receiving of the Torah, okay, so this is where people stay up all night and learn, etc., etc. Okay, the night preceding the receiving of the Torah, nigmaru ba kol zivugim shebemei hastara, are finished all the zivugim, all the unions that we make, which happen in the times of concealment. Now, I personally, I find it easier to work with this idea of the Gemara of Tikkun. So the night prior to the receiving of the Torah is the time of the exile, the time of the actual, when God's light is hidden from us, okay, which is when during all that time, we finish all that union of having faith during the time of God's light being hidden. And therefore this night is designated as Leleila de Kalit Chabat B'Ba'ala, the night of the bride which joins with her husband. And this is when she's invited to be on the following day under the chuppah with her husband, Shu Chag Shavuot, which is the festival of Shavuot, Shebo Nigmar Tikkun B'Chevut Mimalach HaMavet, in which the tikkun is finished with freedom from the angel of death, which is the freedom from the will to receive for ourselves alone. Shuazman Shatzadikim, which is the time when the tzadikim, aladei ma'aseim tovim, through their good deeds, osim chuppah hadashah lekala, are making a new wedding canopy for the bride. V'nei noach li yoter lamshich habiur b'derech hapirush harishon. And Rav Ashlag finds it more comfortable to consider carry on his explanation according to the time of the exile and the time of redemption. Okay. However, but one who's thinking about it for himself, can certainly copy all these matters to the day of Shavuot, kinyan echad hu, because it is absolutely one issue. Any questions? All right. I just wanted, before we go on with Zohar, I want to just tell you something which I find very, very important and interesting. And that is, well, it's important, is that Rabbi Ashlag teaches that the time of giving and the time of receiving is not identical in spirituality. Like in the physical world, okay, when somebody gives you something, you receive it on the spot. You know, he stretches out his hand and you receive it. Okay, so giving and receiving take place at the same time. But in spirituality, that's not the case. Okay, we're given an opportunity. The question is, have we received it yet? Okay, because it can be very widely separated. So every Shavuot, the important thing that we really need to see is that we're given the opportunity to receive the Torah. And the question is, are we ready to receive it? Okay. And how are we ready to receive the Torah? By doing the best we can to come into affinity of form with the Creator. All right. What does that mean? It means not doing the mitzvot which are lo ta'aseh, which are the don't do's, and actively doing as much of the mitzvot we possibly can do for love of God, and having at least try to have the intention of doing the mitzvot for the sake of God and not for receiving for ourselves alone. Okay, so when we prepare the vessel, all right, then we can actually receive the Torah and not just celebrate the day it was given to us. Because celebrating the day it was given to us doesn't actually do it. What we have to do is actually receive it. Okay, so by preparing the vessel for receiving it, that's what we're actually doing. Okay, and that's why Rabbi Ashlag is making such a very important message here about how we need to do the work when God's light is hidden from us, because it's during that time we're actually preparing the vessel to receive the Torah. Okay. All right. Any questions?
Yeah.
Hello?
Yedida?
Yeah.
Hi there. Two things. One, when you spoke earlier about the night before Shavuot being the night that all the final tikkunim are done, if I understood correctly, could you elaborate a bit more on that? I would like to understand that sort of in our time now, like in our avoda. What does that really mean? And also, when you just said, I understand we have to work on preparing our vessel, but isn't that the entire work of Sfirat Omer? We are literally counting and working through the spheres, and we are preparing ourselves for the receiving of the Torah. Isn't that what we're doing now?
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely.
So it's not darkness. It's not always through darkness. It's through a conscious process and tapping into what the sphere is each day, what we should be working on. It's not always in darkness. It's internal work. That's how I see it. I don't know. I would love to hear what your thoughts are.
Okay, so a mistaken idea is to think that the Sphira is a vessel filled with light. Okay, but that's actually not the case. Sphira, like we count the Omer, so that it's associated with a different Sphirot. All right. So the Sphirot are actually not vessels filled with light. They are vessels which had the light in the Ein Sof and are now empty. And when we count the Omer and we go from day to day looking at those Sphirot, we're actually awakening different desires in the soul for reconnecting, for reawakening that light, which needs to be fulfilled on Shavuot. Okay, so it's not people think about it because they're called Sphirot, they're called shining, so you think that they're filled with light, but they're not. They are actually, they were filled with light in the Ein Sof, but from the time of the Tzimtzum onwards, the light has left the Sphirot, but they have an impression of the light that they once had and what they would like to get again. All right, and that's why they're called Sphirot. And they actually want to receive the light. So what we actually need to do is we want to say, I would like to have chesed, I would like to have gvura, I would like to have tiferet, and actually go through and waken up all the desires that the vessels, and this is what we're doing, we're getting ready all the vessels, okay, with which the light of God can fill us when we come to receive the Torah on Shavuot. Okay, is that?
Yeah, that's definitely clearing, and perhaps I didn't express myself correctly. I don't know. I don't really see them as light. I see them in my mind, and maybe as concepts that I have to work on. That they're like titles. They're like highest madrigas, and I have to pull them out of myself and aspire to them and be conscious of them. So thereby, It's true what you're saying is that I'm trying to fill my vessel through the climb of the 49 days.
Yeah, I don't think it's filling the vessel. I think it's actually creating more and more and more of the vessel in Kedusha. Okay.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay.
That's good.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, great. And so, but what about that night before Shavuot? Then the night before, what you said about the tikkunim. What does that mean?
Okay, one second. Let's just go back to that bit there. ונמצא שבלילה קודם קבלת התורה, we find that on the night prior to the receiving of the Torah, and you can take that either way as being the night before Shavuot or the night before the Gemara Tikkun, okay, the time of exile, Tikkun, are finished at that time, all the zivugim on the days of Hastara. I suppose what it means here, I mean, it elaborates a little bit more further on in this piece of Zohar, is you actually get to the Malchut, okay? It's the Malchut of the Malchut, it's the 50th day. And the Malchut is like it's the vessel, all right? All the others are actually there but they're not the real knotty problem. The real difficulty we have to deal with is the malchut of the malchut. It's the hardest part, okay? You know, the hardest part of any job is the last bit. They always say the last bit of any job is the last 10%. Well, that's true. Okay, so the malchut of the malchut is the last bit, is the last way to actually rectify our vessels in order to receive the light of the Kabbalat Torah. He goes into it a little bit more further on in this piece. I don't know quite if we'll get there, but anyhow, it does.
Thank you.
All right, yeah, that was a very good question. All right. Okay. וזה שכתוב, כל עינון חוויה וכולי, אלו התומכים דאורייתא, נקראים בני היכלה דקלה, הם צריכים להיות דבוקים בשכינה הקדושה נקראת קלה, בכל הלילה של הגלות. So all these companions, which are the ones who are upholding the Torah, that's we said, those are the ones who are actually making the Torah manifest, all right, during the time of the night, are the ones who are actually united with the holy Shechinah, which is called the bride, during that whole time of the night of exile. Okay, exile is times when we cannot see the light of God. כי אז, בימי הגלות היא מתעדכנת על ידי תומכים דאורייתא, בכל אלו המעשים טובים, בתורה ומצוות שהם עושים. So it's during the days of the exile, during the days when God's light is not shining, the bride itself is rectified by those people who are making the Torah obvious by their support of the Torah, through all their good deeds and Torah and mitzvot which they're doing, until they completely purify her from all the aspect of good and evil, that it's no longer just good and evil, it's only good. And she now becomes those who simply practicing the Torah. They don't have to make it manifest anymore. It's only good and no evil. ולפיכך צריכים התומכים דאורייתא, שהם בני היכלה דקלה, לשמוח איתה על התיקון הגדול הזה שנעשה בקלה על ידיהם. So those who uphold the Torah, which are the children of the temple of the bride, need to rejoice with her on this great tikkun, which is done for the Shechinah, for the bride, by their hands. In other words, every single one of us, who ever doing a good deed or learn a bit of Torah, who are doing a good deed, we're part of it. We're part of it. So we need to be so happy, okay, that whatever we're managing to do, we're part of it. We're part of the rectification of the bride. We're part of the rectification of the Shechinah, all right? Nobody's expected to do all of it. We all need to do our little bit, whatever it is. וזה שכתוב, לנחדי עמה בתיקונها, דיו איתקן המלא באורייתא. And they unite with her in her tikkun, okay, with which she's rectified by those who are practicing the Torah, by the tikkunim which come before us from the Torah and the Nevi'im and Ketuvim. And we need to do these tikkunim besimcha, with joy. Okay. Right. How are we doing? Yes, we've still got a bit of time. So now we've seen that all these spiritual levels and the revelation of the inner meanings of the Torah, which are actually building the Shechinah to the Gemar Tikkunah, to the end of her Tikkun, all these are done only by those people who are upholding the Torah in the times when God's light is hidden. And therefore, all these spiritual levels which come forth in the time of Galut are called the corrections of the bride and her jewelry. And then he details them, Torah, prophets, Nevi'im, Ketuvim, and then he tells us that how they relate. Chesed, Gevurah, Tiferet is the Torah. Netzach, Hod is the prophets. The Malchut itself is the Ketuvim. And the Mochin Devav Tzavot, that's the light which comes on the lower levels, is drawn to her from the inner meanings of the Midrash, but the highest light of all comes through the inner meanings of the Chokhmah, which is the Kabbalah. Okay, and all these tikkunim need to be brought to the bride on that night when she finishes her tikkun, which is the night before the day of the chuppah. And now he talks about the handmaidens. Okay, this is a little tricky. Okay, and I'm not quite sure myself what this actually is about, but anyhow, we'll try. Okay, Malachim, the hand in which, oh yes, I do know, the Malachim, the angels, in which the vessels of the absolute Malchut, the real will to receive, okay, the Malchut of the Malchut, okay, which is the hardest part of the Malchut, okay, which we don't deal with, okay, we don't have the capacity to deal with that. God himself deals with that, okay. We as human beings don't have the capacity to deal with the original Malchut, which came out in the Ein Sof. We can only deal with the Malchut following its connection with compassion. When compassion connected with judgment, that's the Malchut we deal with. We can't deal with the Malchut, which was the original Malchut. That's too hard for us, but God himself deals with it. So it says here, the angels who are connected with that really tough part of the Malchut are called the handmaidens, who serve the Shechinah. And the Shechinah exists over their heads, and that is over those who uphold the Torah, over the Torah, those who uphold the Torah, in the inner meaning of Al Roshi Shechinat El, and above my head, the Shechinah of God. And so together we have also the handmaidens who serve her, that's the angels, okay, and she's happy with them and she's rectified by them. And she's one with them all through the night, that is throughout that time of the tikkunim, which is called the night. Okay, and she cannot come to the chuppah unless she comes together with those who uphold the Torah, who have rectified her as is necessary. So from what we've understood, that the Gemara Tikkun is not actually going to bring with it anything new, all right? Now this comes from a different part of the Zohar, a little bit before here, I think, okay, another article, but which explains there that the highest light of Atik Yomin, okay, is where all the light which ever came down and all the light that we've given, all the work that we've done in Torah and mitzvot throughout all this period of God's light being hidden from us, plus all the suffering as well, all right, it's all counted. All that light throughout all the 6,000 years of the world's tikkun is all gathered together at a spiritual level called Atik Yomin, all right? Because, for example, when we do a mitzvah and you do it with all your heart, you don't necessarily feel anything, okay? The light that you've caused is stored, all right, at Atik Yomin. All of it's gathered together. And kol hazivugim v'kol hamadrigot, okay, which have ever, all the unions, all the meetings of the light and the vessel together, and all the mitzvot that we did, all the light that we've caused, all right, and the suffering as well. It's all included together throughout all the 6,000 years of the world's tikkun, one after another, all joined together into one great union of the light and the vessel, all right, and this is called Rav V'Yakira, great and beautiful, and it all comes forth in one moment. And when it comes forth in one moment, all that light is released into the world in one moment. And it says that at that time, the whole of all humanity will return to God, do tshuva me'ahava. Okay? That everybody will return to God from love. And that all these donot, all the arrogant acts will become zechuyot, will become merits. Because then we'll see that even all the arrogant acts were only in order to bring us to the Gemara Tikkun. So all those zivugim that we did throughout the 6,000 years actually come or get released at one moment, okay? And that's the actual reality of the Gemara Tikkun. V'az tikanesa kala l'chuppah, and then the bride will come into the chuppah. V'zeh shekotev, Kodesh Baruch Hu sha'il alayhu, the Holy Blessed One asks after him, Dahainu al kol echad ve'echad, over every single person, she'ela pai mai nukvin, who only once, who even just once raised up my nukvin, that is, even once did a good deed, or even once did gemilut chasadim, okay? Lezivug elyon, to the highest, to contribute to this zivug, okay? God asks after everyone, ki kivyachol, yoshev u'machakeh ad shitkaptzu kulam. It's as if he's sitting and waiting until everybody is gathered together. We find that he asks and waits for every single person. And after they're all gathered together, then he does this one great zivug, which is actually nothing new, but all the work that we did during all that 6,000 years of the world's tikkun is all released together in one moment, because it's all gathered together at that one place. And he blesses them, and crowns them. They're all blessed and crowned with the light of all that all that light. In one moment. And this is the end of the tikkun, which is called the light of the crown of the bride, or the light of the bride. Okay, right. I think that's Baruch Hashem. I think really Baruch Hashem, we have to be really grateful that we managed to learn that today. Okay. All right.
Yedida.
Yeah.
How does this compare to the situation with the bride and the groom on Shabbat?
Oh, that's a good question. The Shabbos bride.
I mean, it sounds so similar, like this, similar activities are going on.
I think you're right. I mean, the Shabbos is also called a bride, isn't she?
Yeah.
Well, the Shabbat is Me'en Olam Haba, is also an aspect of the world to come. It's an aspect of the Gemara Tikkun. I think you're right. I think you've hit on something there.
Is it another level? Is Shavuot like another level, or compared to Shabbos, or is Shabbos just part of it? Or, I mean, how do they relate?
I think they must be absolutely related from what you've said. I really, do you know something? It's the question never occurred to me. It's a brilliant question. I don't know the answer. I do know that Shabbat is also the Malchut, and it's the Gemara Tikkun, and also it's interesting because it also doesn't add anything new. It's simply all the work that we do during the time of the week.
Yeah.
So the mitzvot during the week actually brings the light of Shabbat. So it's a parallel metaphor, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's a parallel metaphor. Yes, we get many of these metaphors kind of repeating, like you have, the Shemitah. I mean, you get and is 7 times. You have once every 7 years instead of once every 7 days.
Right.
And you have the Yovel, which is the 50 gates or the 50 years instead of the 50 days. So you actually do have, the same sort of metaphors coming again and again. It's very hologramic.
Yeah, it's true.
It's
Must be a
brilliant
similar
question.
energy that exists in the world, Yudita.
It comes around in different ways. It's expressed in different ways. Yes. I think because, God gave us so many different ways to understand the same message, because we are stuck in our bodies, in our wills to receive for ourselves alone. We're stuck with that, we're so and so he gives us, the same message from lots of different directions, and that way we can sort of grab it.
Makes sense. That makes sense. That's definitely a level of it. Definitely.
Yeah. You see the same pattern of things happening a lot in Kabbalah.
Yes, definitely. Repeated over and over again.
Yeah.
I think it'll all be revealed to us that it's probably all different, but we don't know. We just don't know. We'll find out eventually.
Yeah, it's a brilliant question, and I don't really, that's as best as I can do with that one. It's a very good question indeed.
If anything comes up, let me know.
All right, okay.
Shabbat shalom.
All right, Shabbat shalom. Yeah, Shabbat shalom. And listen, everybody, have a Chag Sameach also, because I won't be able to see you next Thursday, obviously. Okay. So have a good Yom Tov, have Chag Sameach and a good Yom Tov.
Chag Sameach.
Chag Sameach.
Chag Sameach.
Thank you so much.
You're welcome. All right. Bye, then, everyone.
Thank you, Yudita.
You're welcome. It's lovely to see you.
I fly out next weekend.
Wait a minute. I'm going to